We are currently 11 weeks into the NFL season, and a lot of things that we thought would happen have happened. The Chiefs are the #1 team in the AFC. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson are fighting for the MVP, and the Detroit Lions are absolutely stomping everybody in the NFC. But one thing has happened that not a lot of people thought was going to happen at the beginning of the year. The Washington Commanders are in playoff contention, and a lot of people may think that it has to do with their running game or their defense stepping up. All of this comes back to their rookie quarterback, Jayden Daniels, who has completely taken the NFL by storm and at one point was also in the MVP conversation. But in order to really see why that is, we must go back to 2019. In 2019, Jayden Daniels was a 4-star recruit out of San Bernardino, California, with 24 Division I offers, with offers from teams like Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and yes, even LSU. But despite having all of these blue chip offers, he decided to say no to all of those guys and instead enroll at Arizona State. And a lot of people saw him commit to Arizona State and scratch their heads. I mean, why wouldn't you want to go to a school like LSU? Why wouldn't you want to go to a school like Alabama? And it all comes down to one thing: Herm Edwards. If you don't know who Herm Edwards is, he is a former NFL head coach of both the Jets and the Chiefs, who had just come out of a lengthy retirement to coach Arizona State. And it makes sense for Jayden Daniels. You want to go to the NFL, so why not go play for a guy who also coached in the NFL for decades? And in Jayden Daniels' freshman year at Arizona State, he wasn't like a lot of guys who go Power 5 and sat a couple years. Jayden Daniels played right away. And in his true freshman season, he threw for nearly 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, and only threw 2 interceptions, while also rushing for 355 yards and 3 touchdowns. And everything seemed very up for Jayden Daniels until the pandemic hit. So in his sophomore season, which was actually just a COVID season, he threw for 700 yards, 5 touchdowns, and only 1 interception, while also rushing for 223 yards and a touchdown. But at the end of the day, it was a COVID season, and it really didn't count. So going into his 3rd college season, a lot of people were really expecting the big Jayden Daniels breakout. And in his 3rd season, he threw for 2,380 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And when it came to throwing the ball, Jayden Daniels really regressed. Now, granted, he ran the ball for 710 yards and 6 touchdowns his 3rd season, but a lot of people were severely disappointed with how Jayden Daniels played that year. I mean, he quite literally had better stats his freshman year than his 3rd year in college, albeit a lot of that was due to Brandon Ayuk no longer being on the team. He had gone and gotten drafted after Jayden's rookie season. And so after his 3rd season, a lot of people were upset with Jayden Daniels, so he decided to hit the transfer portal. And instead of just moving on, they all went and raided his locker, which then produced this video that we all know and love.
This shit out. He out of this. Suck anyways.
And so when it came time to transfer for the final 2 years of Jayden Daniels' career, he wanted to go to a place that had NFL receivers in a very good competition so he can show NFL scouts, look, I'm ready for the NFL. Because if you look at it, the one time that he was paired with an NFL receiver, he kind of dominated his freshman year at Arizona State with Brandon Ayuk. So what better place to be surrounded by NFL receivers than LSU? And that's where Jayden Daniels went. And in his 4th college season now at LSU, Jayden Daniels got back on track, throwing for 2,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. And you may be thinking, Ben, that is very similar to his freshman year. Did he really get that much better? And yes, he did get a little bit better throwing the ball, but the real change was in the rushing game, where Jayden Daniels ran for almost 900 yards and 11 touchdowns against SEC competition. You see, it's one thing for a quarterback to transfer back, maybe from FBS to FCS or from Power 5 to Group of 5 conferences, and dominate there, because it is a little bit easier. But it is another thing for a quarterback to come from an inferior conference like the Pac-12, I'm sorry, but it's just the facts, and come into historically the toughest conference, the SEC, and get better. And so going into his senior season at LSU, a lot of people were expecting Jayden Daniels to take another step. But a lot of people weren't ready for the leap that Jayden Daniels would take. In his senior season at LSU, Jayden Daniels threw for 3,800 yards, threw 40 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions, while also running for 1,134 yards and 10 touchdowns, being responsible for 50 touchdowns in the SEC. And when you put up stats like that in the SEC, you win the Heisman, which is exactly what Jayden Daniels did. And after his senior season, a lot of NFL executives took notice. I mean, sure, it's easy to throw when you have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. on your team, but a lot of people were impressed with how Jayden Daniels raised the level of competition and got even better, But the thing was, he wasn't going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. That honor belonged to last year's Heisman, Caleb Williams. And so when the draft rolled around, it was a foregone conclusion that Caleb Williams would go to the Bears and Jayden Daniels would go to the Commanders. But here's the thing. The Commanders had completely cleaned house the year before. And when you completely clean house, you have to get a new head coach. So they got Dan Quinn from the Cowboys, who is a defensive head coach. So they needed to get someone who was good with offense. So they went out and hired Kliff Kingsbury. So I thought that right now would be a fantastic exercise called What Quarterbacks Has Kliff Kingsbury Worked With? We start in 2011. In 2011, Kliff Kingsbury worked with Case Keenum at Houston and set almost every single FBS passing record. The year after that, people saw the work that he did with Keenum, so what did they do? They wanted to hire him. So who hired him? Texas A&M. And sure, you might be thinking, oh, Texas A&M has had a couple good quarterbacks. But when you think of Texas A&M football, only one comes to mind: Johnny Manziel. And yes, you would be right. That is who Kliff Kingsbury coached. And after his work with Johnny Manziel, a lot of people thought, okay, now it's time to give Kliff Kingsbury a head coaching job. So Texas Tech came around. And his first year at Texas Tech, who did he start? A walk-on freshman by the name of Baker Mayfield. But you see, Baker Mayfield ended up transferring. So it's time for you to move on to your next quarterback. So now that Baker Mayfield has transferred, it's time for a new quarterback to come in and play. So who did he put at quarterback? Patrick Mahomes. And after the work that Kliff Kingsbury did with Patrick Mahomes, we all know who Patrick Mahomes is. I don't have to walk you through it. They thought it was time for him to get his shot in the NFL. And who was his quarterback for the entire time he was in Arizona? Kyler Murray. Now, granted, a lot of you can say, oh, but look at his head coaching job in the NFL. But the thing is, it is very different being a head coach from an offensive coordinator. This man was a quarterback coach for Heisman, for breaking records. He was an offensive coordinator for a guy who ended up winning the Heisman. Granted, it wasn't with him, but he was a crucial part in the journey. And then he was the quarterback coach for a guy who was on trajectory to become the greatest player in NFL history. And yes, technically he was head coach at Texas Tech. But if you think that Kliff Kingsbury wasn't one-on-one coaching these quarterbacks, you are dead wrong, because that is exactly what they said has happened. So he got fired from the Arizona Cardinals, and a lot of people thought that he just missed his chance. So what did he do? He got a job at USC working with Caleb Williams. And so the Washington Commanders saw that, and they saw, wow, look at this guy's great list of accolades with every single quarterback that he has worked with. This is the perfect guy to pair with our second overall pick, Jayden Daniels. But the thing is, there were not that many lofty expectations placed on the Commanders. They were projected to be either the third or fourth team in the NFC East behind the Eagles and the Cowboys, and Jayden Daniels was looked at as kind of a project. I mean, he's a top dual threat quarterback in the class, but a lot of people thought that he wasn't necessarily going to hit the ground running, especially because the Commanders organization had completely just reshaped. But boy, they were so far from the truth that it is crazy. Because through 11 games this season, Jayden Daniels has thrown for 2,338 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, with a QBR of 67.6. That ranks 5th in the league. And he's also been doing his thing rushing, running for 482 yards and 4 touchdowns. But you see, this season hasn't just been successful for Jayden Daniels alone, because right now he has the Washington Commanders at a 7-4 record with, as it stands today, an 82% chance of making the playoff. Which, if you told any Commanders fan that at the start of the season, they would probably kiss you on the mouth. Because while it was expected to be good, no one expected it to be this good. So let's recap. Jayden Daniels was a 4-star coming out of college with 24 Division I offers, turned all of them down to go to Arizona State to work under an NFL head coach, or ex-NFL head coach in Herm Edwards. His freshman year did very good because he was throwing to Brandon Ayuk, had 2 down years, one being a COVID year, and everyone was ready to give up on him because he just lost his first-round wide receiver, so he transferred to LSU. And at LSU, he went from a bottom conference to the best conference in the country, dominated, and then the next year won the Heisman. And after winning the Heisman, he got paired up with one of the greatest quarterback talent evaluators in the 21st century. And when you put it like that, it is no surprise that right now the Commanders are rolling and Jayden Daniels is at the top of the Rookie of the Year conversation. Thank you guys for watching. I know I have not been that consistent on YouTube. I mean, I've posted some shorts here and there, but it takes a lot of time that I don't necessarily have right now. So all I ask is that you guys like and sub and just Comment if you liked the video, if you didn't like the video. We recently just had a video get 100,000 views, the gunslinger one on Jordan Love. And that's crazy. I never believed that would be happening to me, but here we are. So I'm going to keep making videos and all that different kind of stuff. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day or night whenever you are watching this. And I can only tell you this one thing. God bless. Jesus loves you. Peace.